Good afternoon, everyone, and it looks like we still have quite a few folks that are piling in. I'd like to welcome those of you from California and Texas and Ohio and New York and Florida, and I see the numbers rising by the second as I'm talking to you. So during my introduction, that should give everybody an opportunity to get dialed in and logged in. My name is Rich Longo, and I'll be your host. We want to thank you for joining us for another Flycast Partners presentation. Today's webinar is a conversation on enterprise service management presented by Chuck Spencer. Now, Chuck started with Flycast Partners, it's been a couple of years now, to help build and expand our process improvement offerings for our existing and future business partners. As our organizational change practitioner and enterprise service management guru, he came to us with a very accomplished background to introduce his Lean Six Sigma Black Belt and ITIL V3 expert with multiple certifications, including ISO 20000 Manager and Consultant, COBIT 5, PMP, Agile Scrum Master, and Change Management Practitioner. Chuck has nearly 30 years of experience in improving and implementing service management processes to drive quality, efficiency, and customer satisfaction. He's an innovative and results-oriented senior technology leader with progressive experience in all phases of service management, protect and process management, enterprise technical support, and organizational leadership and strategic development. And I'm sure there's a lot more in there that I haven't even touched on that Chuck is able to do and has certifications for. But before we get started with our presentation, Chuck, let me introduce our organization. Flycast Partners is here to deliver a seriously amazing IT experience, founded and staffed by personnel that have many, many years of experience in the IT space. We took the best ideas from these collective experience and added the best components necessary to grow and become a leading value-added reseller in the North American IT market. We offer best-in-class implementation services and training in ITSM, ITAM, workload automation, and capacity optimization, as well as enterprise service management using ITIL best practice. Our professional services can scale up easily, up or down, to meet the IT needs of any customer, regardless of your size, complexity, or budgetary restrictions. We do offer implementation services both on-site and remote, as well as training to reinforce your company's long-term IT success. Our ongoing remote administration and support service offerings will enable your organization to focus on those normal day-to-day operations, saving you both time and money. I encourage you to reach out to us at 844-FLYCAST, that's 844-359-2278, with any questions or just asking about some of the things we might offer. Or you can visit us at www.flycastpartners.com. This is one of many webinars that we offer here at Flycast Partners, and I encourage you to go to our website and check out any upcoming webinars, such as this week being a conversation on enterprise service management. Next week, we'll be talking about organizational change management. Part of some of the different ESM series we run and ITIL series that we run here at Flycast Partners. You can also access our website to look at various tools that may be a solution for your organization, or look at different training offerings that we have here at Flycast Partners. Utilize our website for researching those industry white papers and data sheets. Definitely, any questions that you have, you can reach out to our chat folks. They'll be happy to chat with you on the website, or once again, call us at 844-FLYCAST. That's 844-359-2278. Now, I do want to remind you folks that you can submit your questions to us today during the presentation, and we'll get to as many of them as we can at the end of today's presentation. But Chuck and I are going to talk as we run through this presentation today with some of the questions that a lot of you may already have. So with that being said, Chuck, I've already passed over the controls to you, and I'll let you take it from here, sir.
Well, today, as we said, we want to talk a little bit about enterprise service management and kind of introduce you to that. And I'll really begin by talking a little bit about what you see when you go out on the web regarding enterprise service management and what really shows there. I mean, if you do a Google search on enterprise service management, you're going to see a lot of different definitions for enterprise service management out there. And some of these will contrast it to IT service management. Some see it simply as an extension of the principles and the concepts that are used to manage IT services, but they're all really saying the same thing. And it's all about the use of process and technology to manage services. And for me, really, the best way to talk about this is let's just drop the word enterprise and let's just talk about service management for a few minutes and what service management really is. If you look at ITIL, which is considered by just about everybody to be the best source of information regarding service management, you get a really clear definition of service management as being a set of specialized organizational capabilities for providing value to customers in the form of services. And ITIL goes on to say that the more mature a service provider's capabilities are, the greater is their ability to consistently produce quality services that meet the needs of the customer in a timely and cost-effective manner. And keep in mind that it's talking about service management here, not just for IT. It doesn't even bring up that word. It really talks about just service management in general. And it goes on to say that it's the act of transforming capabilities and resources into valuable services that is really at the core of service management.
What do you mean by capabilities and resources, Chuck?
Well, when we talk about capabilities and resources, resources are really easy to define. I mean, these are the tangible assets of the company. It's things like infrastructure, equipment, technology, money, human resources, all of those things. Capabilities are the intangible assets of an organization. Things like the ability of the organization, its people, its processes, the way it uses technology, all of those things, how it carries out the activities related to providing services. And these capabilities can't be bought. They have to be developed within the organization. So if you're looking at developing the organization's capabilities for service management, it becomes important to understand these capabilities really and kind of what we're talking about here. And if you take this, the capabilities regarding associated to people, you can break that down further into the skills, the experience, the knowledge, and the training that the people within the organization have available to them to deliver and support the services the organization needs to provide. And again, whether those services are delivered to internal or external customers, whether those are IT services, whether those are any type of services that are really out there. From the process perspective, the organization needs to have processes that are efficient and that they are able to deliver and support services in a timely yet cost-effective manner. They need to be effective in that what they deliver is what the customers need, and they deliver that with the expected level of quality. And it's about ensuring that you have the right levels of governance in place to ensure that the processes are in fact being followed, that people are doing what they need to do and what they're supposed to do. And to do that, you have to have some sound policies in place with the appropriate levels of controls. And then the organization also needs to develop the quality or the capability, to continually improve both the services that they're delivering and then, of course, the processes that are used to create and deliver those services. On the technology side, the organization needs to ensure that the technologies and tools that are used to create, to design, to implement, to monitor those services, as well as any that they use as part of the service itself, are something that within ITIL we call fit for purpose. Do they do what we need them to do? Do they provide the needed utility? And then do they do this in a way that we need them to do it from an availability, a capacity, a reliability, a security perspective, all of those things. And this is something ITIL refers to as fit for use or warranty. And then whenever possible, we need to develop the capability to effectively make use of the technology that we have to automate the design, the implementation, the ordering, the provisioning, and the monitor of these services. This automation helps us ensure consistency, and it makes sure that we can do things the same way every time and that our processes are somewhat repeatable. Now, the goal is to find a sweet spot where all of these capabilities are optimized and then expand this level of optimization as far as possible as we mature the organizational capabilities around service management. And again, these are the same whether we're talking about IT or whether we're talking about enterprise services.
So how does the organization improve their capabilities?
Well, the way that we really talk about or think about improving those is to look at what the organization needs to do. I mean, to accomplish this improvement of capabilities, first off, they need to determine the services that they're really going to provide. What is it that their customers need? Again, whether those customers are internal, whether they're external, really doesn't matter. What are the services that you're going to need to provide? And then, of course, you need to plan and design those services. You have to provide information to the people who are going to order those services about how to order them, what's included as part of the service, what the cost of that service might be. And then, of course, we need to roll out and deploy that service, make it available to people. It's important that we provide knowledge related to those services, and this knowledge is really knowledge that the users or the customers of the service need, but also just knowledge to the people who have to support that service about how to support it, what to do when this occurs, how to handle this type of situation or this type of request. You're going to have changes to those service because your business is going to change over time, and so you need to be able to track and manage those changes to the service. You want to have some ability to track all of the assets that make up that service, all the pieces that are the moving parts of that service, and then understand what the relationships of those are, so that if you make a change to one of those assets, you know how it's going to impact the other assets that are used to deliver that service. As I said, you have to have a way for people to request the service. You have to have a way for people to report and track the service issues that they might be having with that particular service. And then your support people have to have the ability to identify and solve the root cause of any service issues that actually crop up out there. And of course, you want to manage and report on your ability to do service, your service performance, and then continually improve services and service performance. Now, these needs that are talked about up here, these are the same needs that IT service organizations have faced really since the beginning of IT. And it's the primary reason that the British government back in the early 70s saw the need to create a service management framework that became ITIL. And over the years, the IT organizations has often been told, run IT like a business. Use ITIL, but run IT like a business. And what we're really saying now is run the business like IT and take those good practices from IT service management and ITIL and extend those into the business services that you offer to your customers, extend those into the services that you're offering internally within your own company. Use those to manage your business. And by applying this framework of methodologies and tools, the organization can start to gain control over the flow and the execution of the internal processes. They can streamline the delivery of those services. And then if we're talking about streamlining internal services, they'll wind up freeing up critical resources so that they can handle key business functions that are really needed to make the organization successful. I mean, if you think about how much time in your organization or in an organization is spent just on providing internal services, and then if you could reduce that number by even 20%, what could you do with those resources? How much more could you put towards the business, and how much more could you put towards helping the business grow? How much time and money could you put back into the core business activity? And that's what we're really talking about with enterprise service management, is taking this ITIL framework and applying that to services across the board. So if you look at what ITIL offers as part of this service lifecycle approach, you will see that all of these needs or more are addressed in the lifecycle stages. So if you start with service strategy, really what's going on here is we're figuring out who are our customers, who are the people that we need to do business with, who are the users that we're going to serve, what services are they really going to need. And again, you can look at this as being business services. You can look at this as being IT services. You can look at this as being internal customers, external customers. It's the same either way. And then to deliver those services, what capabilities do we as an organization have to develop? What training, what experience, what skills do we have to put in our people? What processes will we need? How will those processes be structured? Who's going to be doing them? Are we going to do them internally? Are we going to do them with outside resources? So how will the services themselves be created and delivered? How will costs be recovered? Are we going to charge for these services? A lot of IT organizations don't charge. It's just overhead and budget. But as you're looking at internal services, how are you going to recover the cost of that? And then most importantly, how is the customer, the user, going to see value in this? So how is value really going to be determined? How will the business recognize that they're getting value back out of that? And also, as part of our strategy, we want to look at what are our overall policies and objectives for IT service management. And all that, again, was really part of our service strategy. And then if we look at the next stage of the life cycle within ITIL, it talks about realizing that strategy. And this is where we really want to now design our services, make sure that they're efficient, make sure that they're cost effective. And again, it's not about just designing our services. We really want to design the processes that we're going to need to deliver and support these services, the policies of how we're going to do this and how we're going to administer the processes and the services themselves. And then as part of this, one of the key deliverables from an ITIL and IT service management perspective is to start to put together this service design package that starts to collect all of the requirements that you have for the service, all the business justification for it, what it needs to look like, how you're going to design it, how you're going to deliver it. For a lot of organizations, this is a project, so you're putting projects around this, putting a project charter in place, and really starting to build and develop this service. The next stage of the life cycle, according to ITIL and IT service management, is now to start to build and test and deploy those services, and then start to plan and manage the changes to the service that you're rolling out, as well as you're rolling out these services are undoubtedly going to cause some changes to your existing services. But what are those changes and how will they impact? And we're starting to really make those changes to those services as well so that services can support one another. We want to manage the risk to any existing services and make sure that we're not introducing anything that's going to risk the services we already have out there, as well as any risk there might be with the services we're deploying. I mentioned knowledge before, that's a capability. Well, this is a point where you're really going to start to develop that knowledge. You start to understand what's really involved in this service and what does it take to support it, and what maybe even what bugs and defects do we know we have in it, and start to capture that information about knowledge so that you can provide that later when it's needed to support that. And of course, with all of this, we want to make sure that as we're transitioning this service into operation, we're really getting the value that the business wanted from this service, and then our customers and our users really need from the service. And then the next stage of the life cycle is really operating those services and delivering those to users who are authorized to have those services, putting them out there within the prescribed service levels. And as part of our design, we would have captured some service targets, negotiated those service targets with our customers, and here we're trying to actually make sure we continually meet those service levels. We want to optimize cost and quality for this service, make sure that we're continually looking at it to see if there's any way to improve the quality and reduce the cost, do more with less. That's always a mantra within service management. We're going to have operational controls that we want to execute at this point, and then we want to build and maintain user satisfaction. That's one of the key things that we have to ensure, is that users are satisfied with what they're getting for a service and the way that we support their service, and they're comfortable with us as an organization providing and giving them that service, that we're doing the right things. And in doing that, of course, we want to minimize any service outage impact and make sure that the business is really able to achieve the outcomes that they need from this service. Service management is all about delivering outcomes, letting the business get the outcomes they need by using your service to actually do that. Now, all of these things are talked about within the ITIL service lifecycle, and best practices are really there to address all of these. And then finally, we want to gradually become more effective and efficient and adapt to changing business needs. As I mentioned earlier, your services are going to change over time. Again, whether these are IT services, whether they're internal services you're offering to your employees, whether they're business services you're offering to your customers, you have to, in today's environment, continually improve those services and continually be able to do more with less. And so you want to become more effective and more efficient at every step along the way. And again, that's what this IT service management lifecycle really offers to us. And again, the ability to apply this, whether it's IT or whether it's an enterprise service, really doesn't matter at this point. So in the end, Rich, it becomes not why do we do this, but why not do this? I mean, if you look at business processes and IT processes and business services and IT services, both of these can benefit from proven best practices for managing services. Most organizations have already adopted ITIL in some form or another. They've already bought IT service management tools. It makes sense to look at ITIL service management framework for guidance on the management of those business services as well. Both business and IT need to have processes that are repeatable. They have to be measurable. They have to be controllable. They have to be scalable. Again, I mentioned you need to always be able to do more with less. And so you're always able to meet the needs of an ever-changing business environment. The processes need policies and controls, whether they're IT processes, whether they're business processes. There are always going to be controls around that. There always needs to be governance in the form of policies, so that you make sure that things are executed in a well-defined manner and that they're consistent. And part of doing that is to make sure that you have well-defined roles and responsibilities for these processes. The people know their role, they know what they have to do, they execute them the same way every time, expectations are managed, people understand who they need to go to for certain things. And these roles, of course, the one way to do that is to make sure they're well documented and that they're understood by all the people that are involved in those, by the process owners, the process managers, process participants, and any stakeholders you might have for that process. Both IT and business processes have to be based on solid processes that provide a consistent balance between value and quality and cost. I mean, you always have to balance that. Make sure that you're getting the right level of quality for the amount that your customers are willing to pay for it, and that the business is really willing to spend to provide this service. Both have to be continually improved, and that means you have to have metrics so that you can measure it, you can monitor it, you can report on it, you can baseline it, and that's what's really going to enable you to do continual service improvement, because I can set up a baseline, I can put some improvements in place, I can turn back to my measurements to see whether or not my measurements or my improvements have really delivered what I expected them to deliver. Are they improving these services? Are they really making things better? And then both need to take advantage of technology and automation, again, to make that consistent, to help us reduce costs, to standardize performance. So really, again, it's a matter of not do you do this, but why wouldn't you do this? Why would you not take ITIL and use it for business services?
Well, can you give us some examples of where you could use ITIL for enterprise service management?
Well, I think probably the best way to do that is to look at a study that was done by HDI several years back in conjunction with IT Service Management Forum. And they gathered some data showing where organizations have been applying enterprise service management. And really, it's anywhere where there's any type of customer service and support that you're offering. And again, it doesn't matter whether you're doing this around a business service, an IT service, whether those customers are internal, external. You can apply these principles anywhere where this is happening. They also looked at areas where facilities were involved, whether you're providing facilities, again, for internal resources or external resources, areas where you're dealing with human resources, where you're dealing with training, financial services, and other services that are out there. All of those are areas where they found organizations to have claimed benefit from implementing IT service management practices and IT service management tools to really deal with their enterprise service management services and processes. So within your organization, where would you start? Well, I'd start by looking at anywhere where you've got a heavy reliance on email to request support or a product or a service. If you're using emails, there's usually a lack of real ownership. There's a lack of visibility into what's happening, your ability to collect metrics and perform measurements around it. All key things that you need to do to manage these requests usually isn't there if you're using email to do this. And if you have a high volume of requests, a lot of times those requests are being dropped, and you really don't have any way to effectively report on the volume or the type of activity that you're being asked to do if you're using email to do this. So this is one area where some of the tools and some of the processes that we use for IT can really help. Another area of opportunity is anywhere where approvals are required or you have time-sensitive requests. The IT service management systems that are predominant today are really built around managing this type of activity and creating metrics around that. And of course, it's not just the tools. The processes and best practices called out in ITIL really kind of address these needs as well, of being able to track approvals, being able to do time escalations when certain requests don't happen in a certain period of time, all of that sort of thing. So again, it's reusing really what's there. Another key area is anywhere where regulatory compliance comes into play. Being able to prove that you have policies and processes with the proper controls and governance and evidence in place is really key to meeting compliance requirements and responding to audits. And I can speak from experience and tell you that a lot of the times that I've been brought in to help design and implement processes, it's a result of that organization having undergone an audit, and as a result of that, there being negative findings and penalties even associated with not having proper process documentation, not having policies, not having governance in place, not being able to prove that they have a process and they actually do this process. So this is a critical area where applying some of the best practices found in ITIL can really help you prevent this from occurring, as well as address and correct any issues that are found if you are unfortunate enough to have one of these audits kind of come back on you. And these are really just some examples of where enterprise service management can be applied that are shown here on the board. I mean, HR is almost a no-brainer to apply this to HR. You have requests coming in there. You have people asking for things. This is a key area where that if you can streamline this and speed this up for your employees, those employees can turn that time that they're taking care of themselves back into the time taking care of their customers. So this is a great area to look at that. Facilities, another area that a lot of organizations look at, was mentioned earlier in the HDI thing. Purchasing, some of the tools you can actually do purchase orders in. I mean, we can build processes around that. A lot of times this is an integration into other financial processes, but you still have to have processes, policies, and tools and capabilities around this. So like I say, a number of areas there. I won't read through them all, but these are all some examples of where enterprise service management can really be applied. And so it's really anywhere that you have a goal that's anything similar to what's shown here, where you have a goal of improving productivity and profit of the enterprise by improving the efficiency and effectiveness of business operations while still reducing cost. And, some of the objectives around that might be things like reducing the cost of just department-to-department interaction itself, improving process efficiency to shorten time scales. And again, if you're targeting this as internal employees, you're trying to be able to let them devote more of their time to the customer versus kind of taking care of their own needs and getting what they need to do their jobs or to manage their benefits, HR, any of that sort of thing. Anywhere where you have objectives of improving process effectiveness to ensure quality, and anywhere where you have to provide visibility and transparency so that everyone in the organization has the ability to see what's going on within a process, to see what's happening, what transactions are taking place, what statuses are there, all of that. Those are all areas where you can really apply the IT service management and meet the goals that you might have by applying IT service management to these particular areas.
Big question for you, Chuck. What companies have done this? Who's implemented ITIL and ITSM best practices for non-IT purposes?
Well, to answer that, Rich, again, I go back to who's implementing in this HDI study that was done, because what they discovered, and granted, this was back in 2014, but back in 2014, they showed that 51% of the organizations they surveyed, and they surveyed organizations that were from across the industry sectors of all sizes, small organizations, medium-sized, Fortune 500, large organizations. They spread this sample out across those. And what they found was that 51% of those organizations at that time had adopted or were currently planning to adopt the ITIL principles and IT service management for non-IT services. And, that's a fairly significant number. And as I said, this was 2014. I have to believe that now, 3 years after that, that number has increased even more. I can tell you that when I go to IT service management tool conferences and when I go to help desk conferences, there's always a very large number of presentations surrounding the use of that particular ITSM tool or that product for non-IT services. The vendors are recognizing this, and they're making sure that their tools can address it. And I'm willing to bet that other conferences they're talking about the same things. And again, it's not just the tool. The fact that the tool vendors are putting these in the tools means that people are looking to use those tools to enable and support processes that are in these areas and able to do these specific kinds of things. So if you look at just the processes that are being leveraged for non-IT use, and this comes from this same study, you'll see that a big portion of organizations are using it for incident and request. And again, these are not necessarily IT incidents or IT requests. They're requests for other things that are non-IT. They're using it for knowledge management, for change management, for customer relationship management, really across the gamut of ITIL processes that are being adapted and used for non-IT areas. And there's really a significant adoption rate for many of the processes that are typically thought of as IT processes. But when you step back and think about them for a moment, these aren't really IT processes. These are service management processes.
What are some of the benefits that these companies have seen?
Well, they're seeing benefits like this. They're seeing an increase in end-user satisfaction and productivity. I mean, the availability of having a one-stop shop or a portal for all internal services, having a digital interface for that, really means faster access to the tools and the things that people need to be productive. And again, if this is internal, it improves your external service delivery time by cutting down on the amount of time your employees have to spend getting the services that they need to deliver services to your customers. So it really winds up being a win-win if it's internal. You're getting more for your external customers as well. And then by bringing the interactions that happen between departments into a system or record and into a process, those interactions can be measured, they can be managed, they can be optimized. So deployment of a digital interface and really reduces the operational overheads by reducing inbound phone calls and emails. Requests are being automatically routed to the right teams. The enterprise service management is really a good strategy for reducing, as I mentioned earlier, inbox overload and weaning staff away from using the email system as a work queue and really getting all of this work in queues that can be visible to everyone and managed from a tool and from a process versus just kind of the open-ended email approach or email request for this. And when you have visibility of these operations from a tool and a process perspective, it's really easy to govern what departments are doing and make sure that they're in line with your overarching strategic objectives. Make sure that they're providing the right set of services back to your customers. Enterprise service management by nature is really an antidote to the siloed nature of many large organizations because it means a more transparent, integrated, and cooperative mentality where business functions think more about how they work with other departments to increase business productivity rather than just working within their own silo. And by turning barriers into interfaces within these tools and these processes, those walls really become, between business functions, become windows, and departments become more tuned in to the wider business ecosystem and the wider need to provide services out to the customers and really help improve the value of the company itself. If we're looking just, as I mentioned earlier, of streamlining just the external execution of business services or the internal execution of business services, those departments are seeing a reduction in their day-to-day operational overheads. And again, more time and resources devoted to change and improvement projects that really help them enhance and create value for the organization. And the companies that are going to succeed in the next decade are those that realize that they have to get out of firefighting mode. They have to become more proactive. They have to become more agile. You hear that term used all the time. We need to be more agile in everything that we do. And then reducing technology cost. Enterprise-wide technology programs are an opportunity to take advantage of the economies of scales. The implementation of a single enterprise-wide digital portal and all the back-end processes that surround that for request management, using one software solution instead of having a number of different point solutions that kind of cater to each domain that we kind of talked about earlier. That's a great way to get a better return on investment for what you're spending on technology to manage services. I'll give you a real-world example that I saw probably 2 or 3 years ago that really brought this home to me. I was working with a retail store operation that they got 1,000 emails a day for store operational issues, and these are all non-IT related types of things. We didn't get the inventory we wanted. We didn't get the marketing material we wanted. We've got a problem with our displays, our real estate. all types of different things that are really that we're really dealing with store support for this retail organization. And as a result of that, they recognized there was no ownership of those emails. Nobody knew who had really picked it up, who was working it. Someone would open an email and you'd see it as open, but you don't know if they took accountability for it. As a result of that, there was a lot of duplication of efforts. There might be 2 or 3 people, sometimes 2 or 3 different teams working on a particular issue that store had. There was no automation of responses or workflow involved, so the store really didn't know if anybody even got their email and was doing anything at all, and what status there was. There was no reporting that they could really do on how many issues of what type they got each day, and did they get them from certain stores or certain areas. Really no reporting around this. And then, of course, without reporting, you didn't have any management view of what the trends or the hot spots really were of what was happening within the organization. I had one senior leader in this organization tell me that he sat at home every night and skimmed every email that came in that day just so he could understand what was going on and kind of get a feel of the pulse. And, did this program that we roll out today cause an issue? Did this cause an issue? What are the trends? What are the hot spots? So what we did with this organization was we just implemented a very simple incident management process. We used the ITSM tool that they already had in place. We still had the stores send emails. The emails were picked up by the ITSM tool. It created tickets. We could then triage those tickets and route them. Some of that was automatic based on subject lines and different things that we had done to cause the emails to be routed to certain mailboxes, that sort of thing. But as a result of that, we had incident ownership and we had accountability. We knew what group was assigned to those particular emails and what group was working on that and what person was working on that. We were able to establish some service level agreements for response time so that everyone knew that when this came in, it had to be responded to, that the store that submitted it had to get a response in X number of hours to let them know that you were working on it and that you'd heard their problem. The result was we were able to report on metrics and on incidents now by store, by region, by department, by category, and then we could create some management dashboards to highlight trending and resolution times and identify those hot spots so that that manager and other managers didn't have to read every email. They could go to a dashboard that would tell them where the hot spots were and where everything was. So this was just one example of taking a process for incident management, adopting it, tweaking it a little bit, and then taking the tool that they already had for IT service management and using those 2 things to really give them a better handle on managing these store operations issues. So again, an example that really brought to me all this home and really proved that it does work. And if you look at what we implemented there, and what we were trying to do, this is the full list of ITIL processes organized by life cycle. So earlier we had the chart we showed you where we talked about what was being done in each one of these areas. This is the same chart, but now we're talking about the specific processes that are in each area of the life cycle.
Chuck, this seems like an awful lot for most organizations to take on. I'm sorry, but this is a lot.
It is. But the idea here is that you don't implement all of these at one time. I mean, that's really the beauty of the life cycle. The key with ITIL, like any framework, is you adopt and adapt. You take it a step at a time and you adopt what you need to address your key points of pain and then adapt it to fit your organization. Put in place a few key processes that built on these. The organization I was talking about, we didn't put every one of these processes in place. We looked at incident management and said the best practices that are here will help us solve this problem. So we used, in their case, this to solve this problem. So again, you adopt and adapt. You do what you really need to do. The whole idea of ITIL is built around the Deming model for quality and as a means to do continual improvement. And this methodology really embraces using short cycles of planning, doing, checking what you've done, and then acting on the results of that to really step up to the next level of quality improvements. And as each life cycle stage completes, then the level of maturity for the organization grows and their capability to do service management grows. It's, again, everyone's talking about agile these days. Well, really, this is an agile concept. If it's doing short cycles, getting a little bit out of it, getting what you can, and then putting in place some more changes, another set of scenarios, and build on that and continually build on it to get the outcome that you really want. And that's the way that you really want to implement ITIL. You want to do it by implementing short little bursts to implement one process, pick the processes that are causing you pain, and implement those. And your goal here is really to improve your level of maturity and capabilities again around enterprise service management. So just as an example, if you were to, right now most organizations, if you're in a reactive mode to service management, you'd look at these processes and talk about whether any of these processes would help you solve the key pain points that you're seeing today to help you move out of this reactive mode. And then once you've done that, you want to look at becoming more proactive and looking perhaps at some of these processes and can we take on these? Will these solve, and make us more proactive in this area? Do we need to be proactive in this area? And so how? And then building on that, you can start to look at being more customer focused and look at some of these processes that deal with being more customer focused. And as an organization, do we need to take on these? So again, while it talks about it as being a life cycle, that doesn't mean that it's linear, that you have to start at the top or the bottom and work up. You pick out of it what you need to do, put that in place, and then find the next thing that supports that one way or another in the life cycle and implement that. And you can continue this all the way up through the various processes that are there until you get to the level of maturity that your organization really needs to be. And when we're talking about maturity, I mean, not every organization needs to have all 26 of those processes. Not every organization needs to get to that level. It's pick the ones that you really need to get through and implement just those few key processes.
So are there other methodologies and frameworks besides ITIL that can be used in enterprise service management?
Well, certainly. Well, ITIL is recognized as the kind of the major framework for service management because it deals specifically with that. And, there are other methodologies that work along with ITIL. It's not a matter of doing one or the other. It's really a matter of taking from these other frameworks. This is from that HDI study again, and it looked at what frameworks organizations were using to really help them improve their service management capabilities. And while ITIL was the biggest one that was out there, Lean Six Sigma or Six Sigma and Lean were both used very extensively. The others that are shown here also to some minor level. KCS, for those of you who might not be familiar with that, is Knowledge-Centered Support. Again, it's another framework that really complements ITIL. And then there are standards such as ISO 20000 and ISO 15504. All of those things, as well as what's shown here, are all areas that can help you improve your capabilities around service management. If you look at from a Flycast partner's perspective, these are the areas, and this goes back again to people, process, and technology. These are what we can offer to help you really with your service management areas. And we focus these just like the capabilities are focused in 3 areas: people, process, and technology. We have training, and we have more than just ITIL, ITSM training. We're stepping up to do more training in the areas of Agile and DevOps and those things. But we do training of all types. We can help do simulations to help your folks understand the value of implementing service management processes. Organizational change management, anytime you're trying to put any type of a new framework, a new methodology, a new tool, a new way of doing business, you have to take into account organizational change management if you're going to be successful, because you're really trying to change the behaviors of people within your organization and get them to move from a current state to a desired state. And there's a real skill set around being able to do that, and we're able to help you in that area. On the process side, we're able to come in and do process maturity assessments. And again, this is not just for IT processes. We can do this around internal processes, business processes, really look at the level of maturity that you have around those processes. We have strategic planning workshops where we can help you lay out a roadmap of what you need to do to improve your capabilities in general. We offer really, I'm very proud of really the process design work that we do, because we offer a level of documentation and process design that I don't think you'll find anywhere else in the industry right now. It's really in-depth and really takes you to whatever level you need to be at to design your processes. And of course, we can help you with continual service improvement. We can come out and help you do training and of your people on implementations of these processes to make sure that everyone understands the process and they're able to go out and execute the process, and then also work with your organization to help you make sure that you have governance in place, that you're really managing these processes well, that you have the right organizational structure around that, and you have the right tools in place to really be able to verify that you are doing processes the way you intended. And then, of course, on a technology side, that's been our strength for years, is the ITIL service management products that we're able to offer you, and then the professional services that we can bring to bear to help you configure and support those processes. So I think that we're really positioned, Rich, in a good way to help organizations really step up their capabilities in the area of enterprise service management. And I guess that brings us to the point of what questions we've gotten.
We actually have got quite a few, and it looks like we've got quite a few folks asking the same question. We've got Jennifer of Capgemini, Aaron of ActionNet, and Mohammed of Fourth Dimension Systems. They're all asking basically the same question, just in different words, and it's about human behavior and cultural change.
Well, again, that's organizational change management, and the name is kind of a bad name. We're actually doing a presentation on this next week, or webinar on this next week, that I invite people to attend. But it's not about changing the organization. It's always about changing the people within that organization and making them understand the need to change their behaviors, to change the way that they do work, to do it a new way, and what the benefit is that for them. And again, there's some real techniques around how to do that and how to get people motivated. It begins with having a vision of where you're going, and to make sure that vision is really well articulated and that it's out there. When I talk about organizational change management, I usually bring up, and nobody throw anything, I'd bring up Donald Trump. And the only reason I bring it up is if you think back to his political campaign, Make America Great Again, that was a vision that you'd be hard-pressed to not get behind and not know why you wanted to support it. Now, your views of how to do that might be different, but still, you'd want to help that happen. And it's the same thing with organizational change management. You have to create a vision that attracts people towards that vision and then help them find ways to move towards that vision. And again, that's any implementation of process or tool or technology, anything you're going to do, you have to build around it these aspects of organizational change management.
Next question comes from Alex of Citizant. Alex, his biggest problem is doing more with fewer resources while maintaining customer focus and improving service delivery quality.
And that's really the whole target of making sure that you get good, solid processes put in place that are repeatable. And this is where I always kind of take my ITIL hat off at times and put on my Lean Six Sigma hat. Make sure that those processes aren't burdened down with bureaucracy, that they don't have steps in there that aren't needed, that every step that's within that process is targeted at delivering value to your customers and making sure that you're doing that. And if you do that and you go through those processes and really streamline them, again, adopt and adapt, and make sure those processes are really customer focused, then you should be able to do exactly what he's needing to do, of making sure that you're doing improvements, but doing them in a way that keeps customer focus, but allows you to do more with less. And often that deals with doing some level of automation and as part of what you're doing and as part of the improvements that you're trying to roll out.
Okay, and we're really out of time, but we'll take one more question, and that's Richard of UPMC. Richard, you're wondering about implementation and adherence of ITSM processes. That's a good one.
Well, again, that's where governance comes into play. But I back it up a step beyond that even and talk about, you typically when you're doing this process design, you're going to set a few people down in a room and you're going to design the process and you're going to document it. And a lot of organizations stop it there. They have this process documented, they build their tool around it, they put those documents up on a shelf, nobody ever looks at them again, and they go off and do the process. But you can't do that. You have to train your people on the process itself and why the process is necessary and why it brings value and why following it will really make their lives easier, not harder. And of course, you have to make sure the processes really do that, of course. But again, that takes us back to organizational change management again very often. But it really is that. It's making sure that people understand the process, they know their role, their responsibility in it, and then having a governance organization around that that really goes and monitors that process, makes sure that it is being done, that it's being done in a quality way. Where they find that it's not being done, don't necessarily lower the hammer, jump in and find out why it's not being followed. Maybe a situation where it can't be followed. Your tool wasn't configured correctly to follow the process. People don't have the skills, don't have the experience, and so you have to put in place continual service things to fix those things that you find that aren't letting people follow that process. But again, you can't just design a process and say it's implemented. You have to train people on it. You have to have an organization that's built around it, and then you have to have some governance around that, and you have to apply organizational change management to make sure that you have changed the behaviors of the people.
Okay, and that's all the time we have as far as questions are concerned. Those of you that have additional questions, please go ahead and email us at info@flycastpartners.com or call us at 844-FLYCAST. That's 844-359-2278. And we'll get back to you within about 5 business days. I want to thank each and every one of you for taking time out of your busy schedules to join us for today's presentation. And Chuck, thank you. I know you're a busy man, so thank you for a great presentation. And I'd like to invite all of you back for next week's presentation on Thursday at 2 p.m. on organizational change management. And once again, Chuck's going to enlighten us all. So thanks again, folks. Have a great day.